Mahaparivachanam. Before long, writing became a fond habit. For many years, I wrote down my daily thoughts, at least 25 lines a day for 2 decades, not realizing that the process was inadvertently improving my expression and adding clarity to my ideas. For this, I owe gratitude to my first teacher, my mother. As a teenager, I began writing with a ting of seriousness, a lot of adventure, and perhaps even a shade of romance. Maternity was the best thing to us, or so I thought. I wrote about Mozart and submitted the article to a local newspaper. When it appeared on a Sunday, I was ecstatic. I took the newspaper to school and shared the article with my teachers and classmates. My friends looked at me with awe, and I felt like that I had really achieved something. It was very rare for a woman to get published in those days, and in that instant I realized that I was possibly the only girl in school whose article had been picked up by the newspaper. Later, I wrote a romantic story and sent it to the same newspaper. Days passed, but I did not receive a reply. So I sent a reminder to the editor with a prepaid stamped envelope, hoping that it would encourage him to reply. Still, there was nothing. Finally, I gathered all the courage that I could muster and went to meet the editor. As expected, it was a man, since women editors and journalists were absolutely unheard of then. The editor looked at me and spoke gently. "My child, we cannot publish this article. A good piece of literature must use the right mix of reality and imagination, experience, observation, introspection. These senses must be developed consciously. So don't give up, but think about the feedback that I have given you today." As I sat and brooded over this, I understood that imagination in itself was only a shining thread and not a piece of beautiful cloth. That writing simply about facts or real issues could be dry, and writing without creativity would be akin to reporting. The editor was right. A good mix of both aspects makes for interesting and impactful writing. It was a lesson that I have never forgotten, and one that I practice even today. My mother encouraged me. She said, "Don't worry about things getting published. Even if you don't stop writing." I can promise you that when you look back and read your articles again after 10 years, you will see the improvement in your expression. Motivated, I kept writing. Later, when I submitted my articles to a local newspaper, some of them began to be published occasionally, like a pleasant shower during the summer. There was no financial compensation for these articles, and I didn't expect any either. Getting my writing published felt like the biggest compensation. The years flew by. I completed the 10th grade from a Kannada medium school and joined an English medium college. In the old days, nobody cared about the plight of the teenagers who were switching from Kannada to English as a medium of instruction. There were many like me in the same rocky boat. To make it worse, it was a critical year where my academic performance would become the greatest factor in deciding whether I got admission to engineering or medical courses or not. Some of my peers were so aghast at the change on language that they changed their courses to study the arts, not because they really wanted to change their subjects, but because science was known to be tough and the arts course was thought to be easy, giving them a chance to do well while accommodating use change in language. I was 15 years old then and unable to write a single paragraph in English. Confused, I approached my mother. She said, "You love Kannada and writing in it, don't you?" I nodded. "Then don't get scared now. English is just another language. You simply have to read more in English and start writing in it too until you get comfortable with the language." From the day on, I concentrated on reading English books and found it very challenging, but I persevered, unwilling to give up, and wrote at least one paragraph in English every day. My grandfather gifted me an English Kannada dictionary for my birthday that year, which became my constant companion for years after that. Luckily for me, mathematics, physics, and chemistry do not require extensive English. I managed to do well and get admission to an engineering college. For a brief period, I stopped writing because of my schedule. Apart from the regular coursework, the engineering drawings were tough and the experiment tedious. Not to mention that I had to manage everything alone. There was barely any time to write. The years flew by. and I wrote less and less, but I read more and more. My inclination towards reading was augmented by my husband's love for it. Since the day we met, he has been gifting me books and continues to do so even today. There is always a brief message on the first page of each gift. To you from me. We read some books together, especially biographies and humor, but we are also interested in other subjects such as history, technology, and anthropology, while Modi was more motivated towards reading about communism and coding. There was an inherent shortage of money, but the desire to read more books remained as strong as ever. So Moti and I decided to set aside a budget of 300 rupees a month to purchase books from the once iconic Strand bookstore. That was all that we could afford back then, and we would save this money by cutting down on expense in other areas. We would travel only in crowded buses and local trains and cook and clean at home. That helped us save the money we needed for the books. But even then, this budget was not enough for me. During those days, shopkeepers would frown at a customer who spent a lot of time simply browsing through books. Please don't touch the books if you don't intend to buy them, because then they will start looking used and old, and a potential customer will not want to buy them, they would say. So I would stand at a distance and stare at the books with greedy eyes. In 1979, I had very little money but a lot of spirit. So off I went to America all alone with a backpack. One late evening in New York, 2 policemen flagged me down suspecting that I was carrying drugs in my obviously heavy bag. When they scanned my bag, all they found was what I was truly addicted to: curd rice. They were so surprised at the finding that I had to explain where I was from and the significance of a curd rice in South India. Many more of such daring incidents marked my journey. When I came back to India, I wrote about my adventures in the Kannada, titled my writing From Beyond the Atlantic, and kept it aside. The thought of publishing it never crossed my mind. More than a year later, I was speaking to my father about my adventures and my writing when he suggested, "Why don't you go ahead and publish this as a book? You already know how rare it is for young girls from our area to go backpacking to no unknown land. It is sure to be a unique book for that reason alone." I was not prepared for that thought. Me, an author? When I thought of the word, I was usually reminded of people like Jerome K. Jerome, P.G. Wodehouse, V.S. Naipaul, Jean Paul, Sartre, and Kannada writers such as Triveni and Bharappa. An author must be of that caliber, or so I thought. I felt silly and strange just at the thought that someone as ordinary as me was thinking of becoming an author. I brooded over it for a few days until the feeling settled. Then I wondered, is there anything wrong in sending my manuscript to a publisher? The worst that could happen is they would reject my work. But I am used to rejection, am I not? Mahaparivarjan.